Let's get more on this now from Representative Peter King of New York, who has been a vocal opponent of the plan to build an Islamic community center and mosque near Ground Zero, and Ziad Ramadan, who is with the Council on American-Islamic Relations. Gentlemen, good morning to you both.
Morning.
Let's start with this notion. You know, Pastor Jones has now said, who plans to burn the Koran on 9/11, on September 11th, on this Saturday, that if somebody were to call from the White House or the State Department or the Pentagon, it is something that would not be ignored. So do you believe that someone from the White House, maybe even the president himself, should call this man and encourage him not to burn the Koran? I'll start with you.
First of all, this is insane. It's dangerous. There's absolutely no place in American debate for what this madman is talking about. My only concern with someone like the president calling him is that you give him status, you give him stature. You know, we can have real issues to debate here this morning. It has nothing to do with the Quran, nothing to do with the New Testament, nothing to do with the Old Testament. We have political, diplomatic issues, and this is insanity that a person like this is tying up the country.
Do you think a call should be placed?
I think if General Petraeus was to say, look, we think that American lives would be at stake here, that you're going to flick on the switch for radicals and extremists to act, I'd rather save American lives. That would be my perspective. Even though he did say a couple of weeks ago that the person he respected was George Bush, and they asked him if George Bush called, would you stop? He said no. But I really hope that if he had a change of heart, that we would do something about that. And
what do you think is going to happen if he does go ahead with this?
Well, you know, you never know what triggers psychotics. And I'd hate to think that people are turned on, you know, just like that flick the switch analogy and someone becomes an extremist and they now go from rhetoric to action. And that would concern me in America and outside of America. You know, we don't want anybody else threatening American lives, and I think that's what's most important to us.
But since this whole controversy erupted, we have seen the American flag burned by Muslims around the world. We've heard people scream death to America. But no one, or I would say most people, do not believe that all Muslims hate the U.S. or wish it harm. So why is so much weight and legitimacy given to this pastor and his relatively small congregation? We're talking maybe 50 members.
I think it's a sign of the times. If a person speaks loudly enough and says something crazy enough, the media is going to cover it and people are going to respond. I think we all do ourselves a favor. We could somehow ignore him, because it adds not only adds nothing to the debate, it brings the debate down and it brings it to a level where no one wants to be at.
Should the media not cover it, which is what the Secretary of State has suggested?
I think so, personally. I think that you're giving him a forum, and I think that if people never listen to him, he might think that this is not something that's worth his while at the end of the day. You know, an organization called Right Wing Extreme said they initially planned to protect him while he does this. And they said that after a lot of praying and thinking, they just didn't realize how this would bring people closer to Jesus. So some people are saying, so they backed out last week, and maybe this is a little bit too right-wing and too extreme for them.
Let's talk about the controversy surrounding the construction of this Islamic Cultural Center near Ground Zero. Last night on CNN, the man behind that proposal, Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf, said that had he realized how much controversy this was going to cause, he never would have decided to build it there. But at this point, he has a responsibility. Listen to what he told CNN.
If we moved from that location, the story will be that the radicals have taken over the discourse.
I know, Congressman, that you're opposed to that mosque being put there, but is he right that he would just be fueling the radicals if he moved that cultural center at this point?
Well, my problem with what he's saying is he seems to be equating the 71% of Americans who oppose this as being radicals. He's talking about the radicals who are opposed to the mosque, which to me is 71% of the American people, and comparing that to Al-Qaeda or radical elements in the Muslim community. And that to me is it's a totally wrong equation. And it's just, to me, that is, he's almost just, to me it's like a threat to the United States. What he's saying is that if this mosque is not approved, that the radical elements of the Muslim world are going to be against us. I don't think we have to prove ourselves to anyone. I mean, Muslims in this country, as well as Catholics and Jews and Protestants, are treated better here than anywhere else in the world. And I would say Muslims probably have more freedom in this country than any of their own countries.
Mr. Rona?
Yeah, the issue with the public sentiment is that when an issue is related to bigotry, unfortunately, our history has shown that sometimes we're on the wrong side. For example, we interned Japanese during World War II. We segregated our military, our schools, and it took an executive order to undo that. And we also enslaved our fellow Americans. So, I mean, when it comes to bigotry, we've got to be careful about the public sentiment. What's really important is that our public officials and our congressmen have to come out and tell people this is not what America represents. These are not the ideals that our nation was founded on, and we have to be better than that.
Yeah, but where I disagree with there is what are we saying? What am I saying as a congressman that in any way violates American ideals? I have raised real questions about the Muslim leadership in this country. For instance, I don't think the Muslim leadership speaks out enough against terrorism. I can tell you that there are mosques in this country where imams tell their congregants not to cooperate with with law enforcement. And if you talk to law enforcement people, they will tell you that very seldom do they get cooperation from the Muslim leadership.
But
and that to me is a real issue.
But the imam might say to you, as he said on CNN last night, this story broke last December, front page of the New York Times. Nobody complained about it then. It wasn't until about 2 months ago. He thinks that it's politicians who've grabbed onto it for political reasons. Even the mayor himself said, come November 3rd, this won't be an issue anymore.
It is the midterm elections, and people like Newt Gingrich who've equated Islam to, Nazism, and we need to condemn people like that and say these sentiments are absolutely wrong. And if you don't think that people are listening to Newt Gingrich or Sarah Palin or Rick Lazio, who hasn't talked about anything else, and he's running for the governorship of New York State, except for the mosque, he's basically driving all attention and driving the public sentiment against the development of a religious institution which is protected by our Constitution.
We have about 15 seconds.
Okay. No one says that there's not an absolute right to build a mosque, but because you have the right doesn't make it right. And I think it's a very legitimate issue to talk about this mosque to be barely 500 feet from ground zero, to have a 13-story, $100 million edifice where 3,000 Americans were killed that day. It's wrong, and I think it's wrong to say that somehow it's un-American to raise that as an issue, because
no, I don't think that's. I think that
free speech is also an American principle.
But Timothy McVeigh blows up a federal building, and we don't say you can't build any churches around there.
This is, gentlemen, this is a discussion that's going to go on for quite a while.
Blame it on Christianity.
That's a totally unfair comparison. The fact is,
why is it unfair?
Because the Muslim leadership in this country does not cooperate with law enforcement.
What Muslim leadership? Let me ask you about that.
Because
there's no Jewish leadership or Muslim leadership.
I'm talking about imams in mosques which are being investigated.
You can't just make a general.
This is why, gentlemen, I'm going to have to cut it off there. I understand, but my point is,
where it's from.
This is why this is such a controversy, because it is so heated on both sides, and it's not going to end today or tomorrow. I have to stop it there. Thank you so much, Congressman.
Thank you very much.
You're a peacemaker.
I'm a peacemaker, exactly.